So I went down to Gwangju to meet one of my students. He took me out for dinner, picked me up from the train station, different things. And I stayed at an Airbnb that was it was actually an old home for missionaries, like Christian missionaries that had stayed in the southern part. And there was a connection to the Japanese resistance in Gwangju. Gwangju is very
Mm.
famous for its independent mindedness when it came to declaring independence and fighting Japan, and also fighting the dictatorship when that came around, things like
Hmm.
that. And so I went down to stay, and they had, of course, somebody to walk us around and to talk about the history of the city and different things. But one of their guests at the Airbnb was a Japanese man who was a curator of a museum. Not
Huh.
only was he a curator of a museum in Korea, he is the caretaker of the comfort women. Do you know who I'm talking about? So,
Yes.
these women um, that were used in, for the soldiers in World War II, that and their survivors, of course, of these atrocities. And they call them comfort women because translated in Japan, that's the term that was used. So they used the
Mm.
Japanese term, which is fascinating in and of itself. We could talk about why there's these, the chip on their shoulder and the generational aspect that, and a lot of this has to do with that. And you can compare it to almost every colonized country on the planet. I mean,
Right. Right.
there's a lot of similarities. I could tell you without a doubt the Philippines has a double problem of being colonized twice
Mm.
on so many
Yeah.
levels. So anyway, but this man, he's Japanese, and he is the curator of the museum and for the home that these women stay in. And that just blew my mind. I just thought, wait a second, you're telling me that the person who maintains this museum and these ladies is Japanese in Korea,
Yeah.
right?
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And I thought, how many? And I would ask my students on a regular basis. I mean, these guys are professionals. They work for, the fifth largest automaker in the world. And I thought, how many of you know this? And they're like, yeah, nobody knows this. And I thought, yeah, that's interesting. And to make things very fascinating, he was in the middle of a lawsuit against a major donor for the women. It was a religious organization that was basically using these women for financial gain.
Wow.
Korean organization, and so this man was involved in court cases.
Yeah.
He was a whistleblower for this organization. He's Japanese. Him and six other brave Koreans are like, yeah, we're not afraid of this very large, one of the largest organizations in Korea. And I just thought, yeah, how much bigger can the world get, right? it was,
Yeah.
it was quite amazing. And I think oftentimes there's no outsiders that will solve that problem. It's always going to be people from within, like yourself. In fact, I mean, I think it's brilliant that they sent you because you're probably the right person to send to Japan on so many levels, just based on your upbringing, the components that you have, and the sensitivities you can have towards Far Easterners, just a multitude of things. And just adding the Korean component, I think, is really important too in some ways.
Yeah.
Um,
I just
yeah,
want to briefly share about a project that I'm involved in, and it's like I'm not doing the heavy lifting, but I just want to
yeah,
mention this
please.
because it's so amazing. So, I've been working with some different teachers on, cross-cultural communication, and I
Hmm.
was able to connect some teachers, high school teachers in Korea, with some high school teachers in Japan, in Fukuoka. And so
Mm.
two teachers have connected, one on Jeju Island and one in Fukuoka. And they have been doing this, it's been a few months, a collaborative project. with their high school students. So they'll meet
Uh-huh.
together on Zoom and have some interaction. And the focus is really to build English language skills, develop intercultural competencies, um,
Hmm.
but also obviously that relationship between the two countries can be very
Hmm.
challenged.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so amazing that they are doing this. And I just want to like give a shout out to them that these
Yeah.
are the kinds of people who will move forward
Hmm.
young people's perceptions, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important to acknowledge the past, learn from it, um, but then there needs to be an aspect of reconciliation. And that
Yeah.
happens through relationships, right? And so these teachers are developing these relationships between these high school students, Chinese,
Yeah.
not Chinese, Korean and Japanese, right? And so
Right.
that is just so like I just love what they are doing, and I think that kind of work is what is going to help rebuild the relationship between those two
Right.
countries.